Hey everybody, today on Practicing Catholic, we are with John Donohue from Truth Charting. We're talking about new media.
When I first started Truth Charting, it was supposed to be long-form 20-minute videos on YouTube.
I love that you consider long-form 20 minutes. Joe Rogan just blows it out of the water in 3 hours.
And I started trading the paperclip up, and then I left with a trip to Europe somehow. That had nothing to do with me except the fact that I said yes to it.
It sounds like water slides might be the missing.
Yeah, I think we need more water slides.
Right there, like that's the secret weapon.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Practicing Catholic, where we discuss the often arduous but always fruitful practice of holiness in everyday life. I'm Taylor Kemp.
And I'm Dr. Scott Hefelfinger.
And today we are joined by John Donohue, who is the founder of Truth Charting. John, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
So John, we would love to hear about you. Who are you? What do you love? And what is Truth Charting?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Orlando, Florida, from a devout Catholic family. I was blessed with some really inspiring parents who raised me to love the Catholic faith.
Shout out to good parents.
Yeah,
Yes.
for real.
Good parents.
Yeah, some of the best for me, for sure. I got a job at my parish when I was 18. I was part-time, and I was the communications coordinator, IT person, resident young person. And then when I turned 21, it was just natural for me to kind of also adopt the youth minister role.
All right, wait, I have to ask though. So that was right at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't go to college.
I didn't go to college.
What made that right? That's the normative American kid path. What made you do something different?
I was homeschooled growing up, so I did a lot of, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. Because I was homeschooled, I was able to do a whole lot of studying throughout high school. Because of YouTube, the rise of YouTube, there was plenty of learning material for film. So I looked into going to school when I was 17, 18, and I went and toured some. But I was actually offered an opportunity to start working in the film industry immediately out of high school. So at 18, I was working on commercial film sets in Orlando.
That's cool.
And that was more freelance. So I took a part-time job at the church.
Were your parents fully supportive? They were happy to forego college?
Oh yeah, actually.
They're like, we're saving lots of money, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think they wanted to make sure that it was the choice that I made and prayed about and really felt, but I think that they had a sense that there was something unique for me, and so they were supportive of it actually. And I think that they knew because I wanted to go into film. I was dead set on film since I was 8. So because of that, they knew that film school might not have been the best path for me because I was already getting jobs in the film industry. So it was a blessing.
That's awesome. Okay, so 18, you take a part-time job at the parish. You're doing some film stuff on the side. Where do we go from there?
Well, at 21, I became the youth minister at the parish, and I was continuing to do a lot of film work throughout that. And I started to have this fire in my heart because I would see a whole lot of kids come in to youth group, and their vision of Catholicism was that it was boring. They'd come in and they were just not happy to be there. They were forced to be there. And that broke my heart because they were just simply not seeing the Catholicism for what it is, right? They're not seeing the true, vibrant life with Christ that I got to see growing up. So that was one thing that I was very passionate about, and even so passionate that it grew beyond the walls of my own parish. And I decided at a certain point, with the help of a mentor, that I was going to quit my job at the parish. I was going to do freelance film to pay the bills, and I was going to start a new ministry called Truth Charting, which was primarily social media, but also with a long-term goal of reaching people through different forms of media, maybe even someday within the parish. And that was my mission with Truth Charting. So I did quit my job at the parish. I did do freelance film work for a few years, and I started Truth Charting throughout that time.
Okay, before we get to Truth Charting in this chapter, I want to jump in for a second. Just like real quick, youth ministry, for those who have experience doing youth ministry, I have a little bit, and I want to share about that very quickly too. But favorite part of the job, least favorite part of the job?
Favorite part of the job is honestly the fraternal aspect of it, the fun aspect of it, getting to actually get to know these kids, get to know like what excites them, when I love the moment when I get to share something with them about the faith that they actually
like
lean in.
You see it.
So that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
My experience, we chatted earlier, but was with Net Ministries, and those moments where you can just see that lean in, that light bulb, that glimmer of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then the conversations that follow on that, it's just like, it's worth all the, all the other things.
Yeah. Worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Those were some of my favorite moments when I would talk to someone and I'd be like, what are you interested in? And then being able to apply that interest that they had to their faith, and they just had no idea. They thought that was completely separate. There's no way that I could be an engineer and also like do that for Jesus. That's just like, those are two separate things. But being able to combine those two things and just really just share the fact that no matter what you do in life, no matter what gifts God has given you, you can use that, you can apply that, you can use that for the glory of God. And that was just one of my favorite things, was just seeing that. One of my least favorite parts of the job would be the paperwork. And I was blessed at the parish that I worked at that I actually had, it was a co-youth minister with someone from faith formation department, and she actually took care of all of the paperwork. So
God bless
permission
these people.
slips,
Nice.
sign up registration.
Which is so important, right?
It was amazing. Yeah, I was very blessed to be enabled to just do the fun part of youth ministry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my least favorite part.
I was moving. Look, sorry, man. I got a question. I'm ready for it, but yeah, it's bedtime.
So I did Net Ministries, and we traveled 6 days a week, talking to Catholic youth all over the country. And we'd have this retreat schedule, and the first thing on the schedule was always MGM, meet, greet, mingle. And that was the part, so I'm actually like very much an introvert. Every time that would come up, it was like, here we go. Like, for the Lord, for these kids, but I just hated that
MGM.
Initial small talk.
That can be tough.
So hard, but then it got better. So,
and then the sanguine extroverts are like, "This is the best."
Yeah.
I had teammates who were just like loving that part.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
I found that varies too a lot between middle schoolers and high schoolers, and between the area that they're from to the culture that they might be used to. I found that one parish I went to, the kids were coming in and they were excited to be there and happy to talk, and it was their first time there. Another parish that I was volunteering for youth at, it was completely different vibe of just no one's talking to each other. We're all sitting in different areas.
Yeah.
So
that's fast.
Can vary for sure.
Okay, a couple things. One is we should have said this probably at the front end, but Truth Charting, that's your Instagram account. You can look it up. He does some great work. We've been following your stuff for a while.
We'll put it in the description.
Yes, we saw that, and I saw you did a ton of work around the National Eucharistic Congress.
Yeah.
So, anyways, check out his account. He does some great stuff, catechetical stuff. It's very fun. The main question I had is that first point that you started off with, which was so important. Like, you kind of received this mission from God. I want to help people understand that Catholicism isn't boring, because it wasn't boring for you, right? It wasn't boring for you. Why do you think it was that it wasn't boring for you, and why was it for most of your peers?
You hear it a lot. Like you get what you put in, right? You get out what you put in. And with my experience growing up, my family we were blessed to invest a lot into it. I had great parents. And so we invested a lot into Catholicism, going so far as each year our vacation as a family we were going to a Catholic retreat center for families. And that was my favorite place in the world because it was fun. I had friends there that I would see every year. The activities were amazing. Going to camp in general is fun in and of itself. And so the marrying of the fact that we're putting a good thing, camping, family time, fun, fishing, water slides, all the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're associating that with your faith. And that, I think, was a huge aspect of it. Was, it's not that these two things are completely separate, because everything that is good is of God. But it's it was this association of this is my favorite place on earth because my friends are here and all of that. But it was also because the love of Christ was just flowing through that place, and it was flowing through all of the other families there. So I would say that's probably why. And I would assume that with kids who grew up thinking that it's boring, it's because their entire experience of Catholicism is sometimes not even Sunday Mass, but just the classroom on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And I think that's the pain point right there.
It sounds like water slides might be the missing.
Yeah, I think we need more water
key
slides.
right there. Like, that's the secret weapon. That's
There is. I agree. Well, I was thinking the same thing too, but there is like a deep truth in it where, I didn't grow up Catholic, so I didn't have the kind of youth experience, but I can imagine where if your experience of the faith is limited to like a classroom, that is a huge piece because God created it all. Mm-hmm. We can encounter him in all ways. And, I'm interpreting this, so you please feel free to connect, but how important it is like the family played for you of the faith was alive in your home. Christ was a friend to each of you in your own way. And how important that is too, like the witness of whether it's parents, whether it's peers, whether it's a teacher, how much of an impact that can have. Like when you see your family living out a personal relationship with Christ, like God's real because he is real. But as a kid, you're drinking from that well and how kind of important that is. Mm-hmm.
Can I just as you were talking, I was thinking, on the side of being a parent now, it almost, there's this way that the more the faith is woven into family life and the things that you do and talk about, it's almost like your job as a parent, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is to almost make life unimaginable without the Catholic faith. And in other words, like, what would it even mean really to kind of like come together for a meal without praying? And I think some people would look at that and be like, well, that's kind of like indoctrination or something. But the reality is, life is actually unimaginable without God, right? And so to kind of live life and present it to your children in that way is like the truth that's in accord with reality.
Yeah, you wouldn't suggest that your child stop eating for a period of time just so that they can know what life is like without eating.
Right.
Yep.
Right. It's that crucial.
It's fused in. So, and that's a nice segue. Why the name Truth Charting? How'd you pick it?
I chose the name Truth Charting because at the time that I was beginning it, I was passionate about finding truth. And like I said, I graduated high school, went right to work. I didn't go to a Catholic college. I didn't study theology formally. But this was something that I was incredibly interested in. And so I wanted one of the main aspects of truth charting to be come with me as I learn about the truth. Because I was young, I was about 19, I think, when I first started the idea, about 20 or 21 when I launched it. And so I wanted it to incorporate truth, and I wanted it to evoke adventure. I wanted it to be something adventurous and fun. It was based off of a YouTube channel called Yes Theory, which was this group of people who go out and do these crazy challenges or adventures in different countries. They'll say, I spent 48 hours in Spain with no wallet. And like, I just have to, like, all I have is my passport and that's it. That was the sort of thing that they would do. And I wanted to take that and apply it to the faith. And so charting is a term for like charting a map, exploration.
Love it.
And so that's the marriage of those two words together.
I love it. Okay, so there was a couple reasons we wanted to have you on the show. One, you're just awesome, good to talk to.
Well, thanks.
But
So
two,
are you guys.
we spend a lot of time thinking about evangelization and formation and digital evangelization. A lot of the things that we share, and you're in a particular space. You're doing that with some of the younger audiences. You've had tons of success. So or at least I don't know if you have some of your, I have some questions that I'd love to ask
Yes.
About that. So here's the first one. How did you discern that God was calling you into digital evangelization? Because I think that a lot of people are asking that question, like, how do you discern stepping into that space?
Yeah. It takes a lot of prayer and a lot of humility, because you need to make sure before you do it that you're not just doing it because you want to be famous. I think for me, one of the main reasons was that I do feel like that fact that I wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 8 was a gift from God, and that I did have a special talent for that. And so I think bringing that into my discernment was, okay, what do I have to offer God? I have filmmaking capabilities. I have a desire for adventure. I have a desire to know the truth. Those are things that I can offer God. And then through that prayer, just first assessing what I have to give, and then offering that to Him. Through that prayer, I began asking, like, well, I've always wanted to be a YouTuber since I was 8, because I grew up watching YouTubers who were teaching me how to be a filmmaker. So I was trying to apply that. Well, is it possible that I do that for the Lord? Is it possible that I tell people about Jesus while being a YouTuber or a social media influencer or something like that? And it has come to multiple points where I have to sit down and be like, okay, did I just do this because, like, I wanted to be a YouTuber?
Right.
Or did I do this because I assessed what I had, I offered it to the Lord, and I humbly asked him if this was a path that he actually wanted me to pursue?
I love it.
And then seeing where the grace was. So first taking the step, because it did seem like this was a desire that's on my heart and is good and true and beautiful.
Yeah.
So I take the first step. Did the Lord offer grace there? Or was it like wearing a shirt on backwards? And taking the next step, and then seeing, does the Lord open up doors in this area for me, to continue doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And so far, throughout, and I can't say that this is going to happen for the rest of my life, right? But so far, the Lord has continued opening up doors, has continued guiding me in my discernment, and I would just say that happens through prolonged periods of prayer.
Yep, I love it, and it draws on some kind of tried and true Ignatian discernment principles of, like, is there something that abides within it? It's not just a fleeting desire. Kind of taking stock on the graces given and then offered.
Consistent?
So I think those are good.
I love how what you said kind of balances, right? Like, first of all, there's this concrete element, like, what have I been gifted with? Like, what gift do I have that I can offer back to the Lord as a gift? And I think sometimes there can be two tendencies where there's something that we have a gift for, we're really interested in, and there's one group that'll say, like, therefore it is God's will for me, right? That I, like, exercise this, which is not always the case. And then there's another group that'll sort of say, I really love this, but there's Christianity is about the cross. That can't be what God wants of me. Like, it must be hard and sort of like unpleasant in order for it to be meritorious. And I think both of those, tend to go a little off track. And so I think you've kind of laid out the middle way, which is kind of like, look at the way the Lord has concretely worked in my life, the desires I have, the gifts I have, the formation I have, the interests I have. Look at the doors he's opening. But at the same time to, get on my knees, right, and say, Lord, this is what I'm seeing. Help me to see that this is your will for me. Give the grace that I need. If this isn't where I should be going, like, shut the doors.
Yeah.
Like, shut the doors, Lord. If they need to be shut the doors. Otherwise, I'm going to take it as your will that I walk through them. So I like how you put that.
Thanks.
I have a little bit of a more personal angle too. You don't have to answer it, but have you had that struggle a little bit with pride? Like, you've been doing this for a couple of years now. You've had some really nice spells of success with millions of views and hundreds of thousands of accounts. Have you had to wrestle with that? Like, the success that you've seen in this area where I'm sure you've gotten in various ways, like some attention, some notoriety. Has that been an ongoing struggle or something to keep in check?
Yeah, certainly. I think that the devil would love, right? If there's any success for the kingdom of God, the devil is going to love to use that more material looking success to try to get in your head and try to
capture your heart back.
Like, you did that.
Yep.
Yeah, like, you did that. And I think that that's been one of the most important things for me to continue to try to keep in mind as much as possible. That when I went to the National Eucharistic Congress with a paperclip, and I started trading the paperclip up, and then I left with a trip to Europe somehow, that had nothing to do with me except the fact that I said yes to it, and that God did the rest. And I think that that's been helpful, certainly. But of course, if you're going to be in the public eye, pride is going to be one of those things that the devil tries to use against you. And it definitely takes a lot of just humility, reminding yourself that you're not God, and you have to allow him to do the things that you want to do, and not yourself.
Yep, I love it. Alrighty, so for all of our youth ministers out there, or if you know a youth minister, let's hope you send them this episode. Because John, I was wondering, you're doing a lot of work in that space with Gen Z in particular. What have you learned?
One of the things I've learned is that Gen Z is famously known for having a very diverse portfolio of where they give their attention to. Now that's probably a new way of hearing that for viewers, because what you've heard is they have very short attention spans, which is true. But one of the things that I've learned as well, in addition to that, is that the amount of attention that Gen Z invests into content as a whole is greater than that of prior generations. So the amount of attention as a whole of the entire portfolio is actually larger, but it's just diverse.
It's just spread across.
Yeah, it's spread across a bunch of diverse sources. And that's horrible for us because we have no cohesive end to all of those. All of those stories are different. And we can end a doom scrolling session feeling something, just overstimulated and down and can barely think for ourselves. So it's not necessarily a good thing that the attention portfolio is larger, because the more, you might not be learning to think for yourself so much in that way. But that's one of the things that I've learned. I think another thing that I've learned is that they're a very authentic generation. So they have excellent inauthenticity detectors, if you will. So if you're not being straight up, they
can tell.
Yeah, and they hate corporate lingo. They hate PR, politically correct lingo. Like, they want you to be real, raw, and honest. And I think that's one of the main marking titles to Gen Z is their authenticity evaluation.
Yeah, and the point you're making about, kind of diversified attention, and there's not like narrative threads really, right? They're jumping from one thing to the next. So you're spending a lot of time thinking about how to be present in this space, how to offer kind of productive alternatives to some of the things they could be doing. How are you trying to think through that, knowing, okay, so they're paying attention to a lot of different stuff. None of it has like a natural terminus. It all kind of just like is, and you're like, this is taking me nowhere. How are you thinking about addressing that issue?
That's a great question. When I first started truth charting, it was supposed to be long form 20-minute videos on YouTube.
I love that you consider long form 20 minutes. Joe Rogan just blows it out of the water in 3 hours.
But that was the goal. And as soon as I started, it was right when the rise of short form media was coming about. And so I did have to pivot in order for truth charting to really succeed. And that was something that you sacrifice. You sacrifice content. You sacrifice the ability to tell a really cohesive and meaningful story, because it's really hard to touch the heart in 90 seconds, which is...
Is that the average length of video you're making is 90 seconds?
The average length of video I'm making is 90 seconds, which is as long as you could possibly go in short form.
Do you try to have each one be its own kind of narrative arc within those 90 seconds?
A little bit. I've gotten more into talking about archaeological or church history. And so that's been really fun to dive into those. And so a lot of times, I'll start with the hook of like, in 1984, archaeologists discovered this thing. And that'll usually like ignite the story aspect of their brains that will keep them, hooked for the rest of it. And then I can tell them about the fact that, hey, the Bible is actually pretty historically accurate if you follow the truth. So yeah, as much as possible, I try to keep one story arc going through each short form piece of content. Yeah.
How do you pick your topics?
Oh, that's a great question. I pick my topics through my own research. A lot of times I'll sit down and I know that I want to write a script for a video. So I'll begin my own independent research of these topics, and I'll try my absolute best to make sure that all of these sources are reputable and that
they're good. You do a good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think you do a great job.
Thanks. Yeah. So typically that's how it happens, is I'll just, go on Google and look for archaeological biblical discoveries. And many times friends and family will tell me a story of something that happened, or tell me the story of a saint that I think is fascinating. And then I'll go and do my own research and write a short script for that.
I love it. What are your thoughts on the relational kind of dimension of, and the reason I'm asking is because this is on our minds a lot. So human beings we're social creatures. We're built for communities. That's how we're built. Now, with the proliferation of technology, so many of us are doing so many things online. We're producing content online. This is going out online. Truth charting's online. But we know that human beings fundamentally are meant to be together and working together. So I guess, how do you try to think through those two things, the digital evangelization, but also knowing that we're made for communion, we're made for community. How do you try to balance those, integrate them, think about them?
Yeah. It's interesting. I've viewed social media and the internet like an island, and I've viewed that island like mission territory. But I've also known that this island is not real life. So very early on with Truth Writing, a friend called me. It was a coworker. We were both in Catholic filmmaking, and he was asking me questions about Catholic social media, the Catholic niche in online, and he was saying, is the internet evil or good or neutral? Is it something that we need to sanctify or evacuate? And that was something that really challenged me. And what I came to was some level of both, because you can't be living here completely. It's not real life. And it becomes a distortion of real life if that's where you continue to live. But it's also one of the best opportunities to reach people, because everybody lives there to some extent. Everybody who uses the internet lives there to some extent if they go and visit it frequently throughout the day. And so it's an excellent public square to reach people at and to evangelize. And so sanctify and evacuate is kind of how I approach that. I know that for me, another aspect of if we're making content, it can be watched alone. And if we're, making content that needs to be, if it's a written content that somebody, like a speech that somebody gives in front of multiple people, that's a little different because it's more communal, more relational. Yeah. But I've also seen in my experience as a youth minister a lot of different areas where we show a YouTube video or show some form of content on the big screen with everyone in the same room, and we're all able to have a super interesting discussion about it afterwards. One of my favorite movies in the world is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
I have seen it.
That's my favorite.
It's a great movie.
It's so good. That's part of the reason why I get to. That's what ignited the adventure.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have had excellent conversations about that movie because, that's something that I get to share with other human beings. So I think it's certainly temperance is always the answer, right? We need to make sure that we're not just becoming our own island or living by ourselves, but making sure that we're sharing these things with other people in real life. Yeah.
I've heard many people say the social media, or I'm just going to, online is the new, kind of it's the Areopagus where Paul went and preached. Do you agree with this argument? Not argument, stance, one could say.
Yeah, I think that sounds fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah, close enough. I mean, it is interesting, as you were talking, the analogy that came to mind is, there are certain areas that you can't just sort of seed and not have any presence there, just give it up, And what came to mind was in the military and a battle, and, there are metaphors of the Christian life as a battle, you need to have people on the front line. Right, you'll lose if you don't. But you also have to rotate the troops around, because nobody can sort of manage forever on the front lines. You'll kind of lose your mind, I think. And so there's a little bit of that, that seasonality, that rotation, that temperance that's there. I mean, talking about temperance, a virtue, obviously, and usually we kind of foster these and we enact them in actions and practices. And the show is called Practicing Catholic. I mean, what are, in your own, in your own kind of careful look at these things and judgment, what are a couple of the practices you've kind of come up with to, whether it's calling it maintain that healthy distance or just stay temperate in your use of media, being online. Can you share a couple of practices or judgments you've come to?
Yeah, totally. Another analogy that I've used for social media is that it's a mall with a whole lot of different shops in it. It's like a shopping mall. And probably about 90% of the shops in that mall are places you don't want your children to be.
Yeah.
Very bad places you don't want your children to be. And yet, most, in secular culture, most of our children are allowed to go into that mall all by themselves with no supervision. That is not okay. That is not. It's just not safe. It's not safe. So as I began my ministry in my digital online evangelization journey, that was one of the things that I knew I was going to have to come to, was like, okay, there's no handbook on how to be a digital missionary. And how can we do this in a way that would be safe, as if we were two missionaries going to a new land for the first time to bring Christianity there. And so I did try to base my handbook, because there wasn't any. So I tried to base the handbook that I live by with digital mission off of the apostles. How do they do it? Well, one, they never go alone. They always go at least 2 by 2. And that was something that I thought was very needed, and I was very helpful to have a mentor throughout that time with starting Truth Charting. The other thing is that, like I said earlier, the island is not real life, so you do have to temper yourself, and it's also designed to suck you in. It's designed to get you to doom scroll. It's designed to hack your brain so that you spend as much time as possible on there. And so you have to have safety nets. My wife and I, and many of my other friends, use an app that makes you wait 10 seconds before you go on Instagram or TikTok. And then once you go on, once you wait your 10 seconds, it comes up and it makes you choose how long you're going to use the app for.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah. And I say, okay, I'm going to use it for 10 minutes max. And then I use it for 10
brilliant.
minutes. And then
I love
it shuts
that.
down. And so,
what's that app called?
It's called ClearSpace.
ClearSpace.
Yeah.
Check it out, everybody.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's so clever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very helpful.
Well, it like engages your intellect. You're like, hold on, you're a rational agent.
Totally.
Think about this before you get into it.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, because I mean that's exactly how social media apps work. Is they tap into the part of your brain that isn't
more
really rational.
Yep.
So very, very helpful. And I think those have been game changers, reminding myself that you can't do this alone. You can't go into this space alone. You need some people with you. You need friends in the space doing the same thing, and then that you communicate with frequently. And you also need to make sure that you have that safety net so that you don't get sucked into whatever the opposite of freedom is of the social media. Yeah.
I'm going to add one, not that you have to adopt the one I'm adding, but I'm adding one to the don't go alone. Well, I think it's really important too to have someone that'll be honest with you, which you're kind of implying with a mentor, but how important, like if you're someone, cause we're kind of talking about two use cases. Maybe there's people out there that are considering like, I want to share the gospel through evangelistic digital efforts. And then there's people that are just kind of like consuming it. So they're two different parties. I feel like if you're someone that you're trying to, as John was saying, kind of discern, like maybe I do feel called to be present, share the gospel through the space, and God's given me these gifts. It's really been this abiding desire. There seems to be peace when I pray about it, because God is going to call digital missionaries. Because that's where people are, so they're going to be there. If you're discerning that call, I love the point. Like, don't go alone. That's so good. And find people that'll just be honest with you. Yes. Like, don't find people that'll just like be your yes people. That'll really be honest. Like, hey, if something is going awry, they'll be like, hey, I don't think you're going in the right direction, or I don't think this is good for you.
Or people that overestimate your own virtue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that'll be honest.
That'll hype you up too much. Yeah.
I think it's critical. All right.
Certainly very helpful.
Did we round out that question, or am I cutting us off prematurely? I have another question.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, this is always one of my favorite questions. What have been some of the low moments? Like, what have been some of the real challenges, some of the real frustrations, some of the shoot, this didn't go how I thought. Things, they just didn't pan out. Or it's been all a home run.
Certainly not. I'd say one of the things I learned early on was that it's a lot of trial and error with this space. So new media, just a whole lot of trial and error. The only way that you can succeed is by throwing stuff out there, see what works, and then pivoting. When I first started Truth Charting, I was making content for about a year. It was hard to get these long form videos out. They'd take me about a month just to edit, if not longer. And so I wasn't making a dime from Truth Charting. And it had been about a year and a half, I want to say. Or no, it was exactly a year. And some friends got married. They were going to go have the Pope bless their marriage in Rome on their honeymoon. And so they were going to fly me out to take photos for them. The Pope actually ended up being in Africa that week, but I still got a free trip to Italy. So, so I was just solo traveling. It was just me. I didn't even get a SIM card for my phone. I was just out there completely just natural in Italy. And it was very cool. I went to Assisi, and this was, this was just about a year after it had been announced. Actually, rather, about a year since Blessed Carlo Acutis, now Saint Carlo Acutis, had been beatified. And he was an incredible, and remains an incredible inspiration for me. And he was one of the main, fires that made me feel like I could quit my job at the parish and this is okay to do digital evangelization. Because at the time, it was not abundantly clear that it was safe to do this on the internet or that it was a good thing. We were not collectively agreeing that the internet is a good form of evangelization. But the fact that the church, the magisterium, was beatifying this young man named Carlo who had, evangelized through the internet, was a really big moment for me. So I got to go to a CC all by myself, and it was on the off season too, so there was basically no other pilgrims there. And I got to sit there with Blessed Carlo's body, and it's a pretty cool casket. If you haven't seen it yet, it's very
pictures.
It's very interesting. But I just got to sit there and look at him, and it made me realize that Carlo was very impactful to those people around him, his close friends in his regional area, but he didn't impact millions of people until after he died. And it was just because of his holiness. Mm-hmm. It was just because of his holiness that he was able to impact people. And so it was in that moment that I was at a super low, because I had nothing to show for the fact that truth charting hadn't really took off,
mm-hmm.
a few views here and there. But I looked at Carlo and I realized that, maybe the Lord uses it anyways. And maybe I continued praying about it, and I continued to feel convicted that this is what the Lord wanted me to do. And so I said, I'm going to recommit. I'm just going to I'm going to say, Lord, I've seen no success over the past 12 months. And that's okay, because I know that this was something that you put on my heart. So I recommitted in that moment. And then I made a video about Blessed Carlo Acutis. And that was the first video that actually got traction on truth charting, and truth charting began to grow because of that video.
Of surrender.
Yeah. I just want to say also for our viewers, Saint Carlo Acutis, check out The Boy from Milan on form.org. Beautiful little documentary on Saint Carlo Acutis, or if you have kids, God's Influencer, also on form.org. These are great. And to go back to your point about the Areopagus, St. Paul, Book of Acts, what a lot of people, we hold up the Areopagus speech, like Paul goes out there and he preaches the gospel to these unbelievers who have a religious interest maybe, they're a Catholic curious, or whatever, and we're kind of this glorious moment, but of course it doesn't work. The net result of that is they're basically very interesting, come back another day.
Yeah.
In other words, it's kind of God became man, suffered on the cross, died, and rose from the dead. And they're let's chat about that another day. And so the need to kind of retool and gather ourselves up again and try again. And in fact, throughout Acts, there are a lot of scenes where Paul does not have actually what
they would be
call
considered
success by any measure.
You'd call them failures. Yep.
Yeah, and I think the text of Acts actually kind of highlights this by saying, the women believed Paul, which, at the time it was women were a little bit the second-class citizens in certain ways and kind of on the outskirts. And so that's almost this way of saying, yeah, Paul won by failing, which is actually a very incarnational way in a certain sense. But
well, and you can see the logic of God. If he's calling us to certain things, it's good for us to struggle with it, because it proves the call in some regards, because he's asking us to regularly recommit to something that we're not experiencing the outcomes that we desired. So you're it's an exercise in practiced humility to do. I've been toiling for a year, not getting what I want to see. I'm still choosing it, Lord. Beautiful. There's a real element of surrender. So, okay, I have a question that you each have to answer separately. And then where you can go quickly to audience questions. If someone was sitting here and they're discerning, entering in, trying to become a digital evangelist, and they're thinking about, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, or I'm going to do a thing, or whatever, what advice would you give him or her? You have to go first. We've made John talk a lot, so.
Yeah. Well, I liked a lot of what John said. I'm trying to think what I would add beyond that. Oh, you know I'm a slow thinker.
All right, John, do you have one?
Yeah. Yes. A lot of realizations that have to be thought of in your prayer. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of people looking at you, and you need to check yourself, do a real assessment of yourself, and make sure that it's something that the Lord wants you to do, and then it's not out of your vices or something because you want to be popular or something like that. You need to make sure that God is giving you the grace to do it, because Catholicism is a niche that you can learn about the actual, logic of it. You can present all the arguments, you can talk about, you can say all the right things, but it's also something that you need to make sure that the Lord is blessing. And so I would say, if you're discerning going that path, prolonged periods of prayer are something that I would say are a necessity before you do it in any large way, because you need to make sure that it's something that is the Lord is blessing, basically, because of the responsibility of it.
Okay, I've got mine.
All right.
I would say, in addition to all the things we've talked about, I do think it's really important in the area of temperance to fill your life with as many real, wholesome, physical, relational activities as you can, right? Because
Absolutely.
in some ways, if that is not filled, I think all the stronger will the temptations be to kind of get sucked into the rabbit hole of the digital.
Your ministry
distracted.
will be an overflow of your real life.
Yeah, exactly. So prayer is a part of that,
Yeah.
but then also just the wholesome communal activities that are part of everyday life, or should be.
Yeah, and if I can add, because my piece of advice was a little bit of a warning. Just one more thing too, as an encouragement as well. Like, this is a very exciting time in Catholicism. I'm seeing new creators pop up on Instagram and TikTok like I've never seen before. There's actually a niche for us now. And I feel like in some ways we have an opportunity now where we're kind of equal quality-wise to secular creators. And I think we have an opportunity to allow the Spirit of God work through us in an artistic manner so that we can actually launch ahead in a way that we did during the Renaissance. And that's like something that I really want to say, just to light a fire as well, is that we have an opportunity here that we've never had before with this new technology.
Yep, I think that's a great one. The one that I was thinking about, not that anyone asked, but I'm going to say it anyways.
Yeah.
I'll ask you. Thanks. So what would you recommend?
I'm so glad you asked. Because I was really two things. One is I think one of the most important things to do with anything in life, but especially if you're trying to discern like a particular path, is to surrender the path to God. Like, make it concrete. Yeah. Go to prayer and say, Lord, but I surrender this to you. Like, my heart's on fire for it. I think I've got this, but at the end of the day, I still surrender it, and then renew that. I would recommend on an annual basis. And then I love what the app thing was doing. Yeah. Because, I do think it's very helpful, especially the Lord can fill us with a fire for things. And that's obviously a real gift. And it's very good at times, especially if you're not like sure, it's kind of new, to say, I'm discerning this path. Lord, I surrender it to you, and I'm going to come back to you in a month or 2 weeks. But like, add just a little bit of a buffer. That actually is really helpful in testing, where is it coming from?
Yes.
Is it coming from me? Yeah. Is it coming from God? So just a little bit of a delay in time.
Yeah, now that you mention it, that was very helpful for me.
Yeah. That was there.
We're gonna skip straight to the personal challenges today, but I do want to remind our audience that you can submit your questions to practicingcatholicpodcast.com, and we'll answer them on future podcasts. So, Taylor, Scott, what are your challenges?
Our discussion was so rich.
It was really.
I actually
you really did answer like all of my questions. It was awesome.
She's marveling over there and can't even read the questions. We got it. All right. Yeah, I've got Taylor's personal challenge for the week. It is to download the app. And
I was going to say, I don't use social media.
I've got mine, though. I just thinking about our conversation. I want this next week to do, a kind of lengthy examination of conscience in two areas. One is the area of pride. One of the things that you find out as you read about the lives of the saints, and I'm not in that camp, but trying to be, is that pride never ceases to be a struggle. Like, they're constantly unearthing new ways that pride is kind of like rearing its head. And I feel like it's a good time to just really examine my conscience about pride and the way that it manifests in my life. And then also in my use of digital media. Am I a good steward of my time? Am I generous with my family? So my personal challenge is examination of conscience, especially on pride and digital media.
I don't have a good one. I'm not okay. So, because I don't use social media, it's interesting because I am one that at least in my life I've discerned I'm not supposed to be there. Meaning like active through social media. It was like whenever I've gotten involved in that type of venture, it like wreaked havoc on me. It was like I was very scattered. So anyways, I've discerned that that's not where I'm supposed to be. But what this conversation has sparked is like we just launched this podcast not all that long ago. And I was just thinking maybe we should have a conversation about, is there a spiritual mentor that we would like to have some level of conversation with about the podcast or topics, like a priest or something? Is there someone that we can have and the whole crew for us on Practicing Catholic to talk to in a mentorship capacity? So that's a conversation. That's the best I got.
I'll put it on the calendar, Taylor.
Thank you. Great.
I've got one for myself.
Yes.
I think one thing that I am going to challenge myself with this week is to focus on ministering and just being present to the people around me, my family, and my friends, who, sometimes with work, I can focus a whole lot on ministering to the masses rather than the people nearest to me.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us again. John Donohue joined us from Truth Charting, so check out his channels. He's got some great videos. And please like, subscribe, comment, rate, all the things you could do. Please do it. We want to make sure that we're making great things that can serve you. So again, thank you for joining us on Practicing Catholic, and we'll see you next time.